the objective is to help the urban development of cities mainly, and to help also sustainable mobility and also energy efficiency. When the 8 managing authorities of the operational programs put their money in a fund of funds, we gain economies of scale because we have a same team managing the fund of funds. They also gain capacity and competences that traditionally we don't have in this type of financial instruments.
Our purpose is to create cities with a future. We have now 3 banks that gives loans, and also we have a guarantee product. First step is the binding opinion of the municipality, and we have in each municipality a focal point. It's someone that is in charge in that municipality of the things related to IFFRU 2020. So after that you choose an expert, an energy expert from the Portuguese National Agency for Energy, and ask for energy certification. And then you go to a bank, one of our banks, 3 banks, and ask for IFFRU 2020 loan.
O município do Porto conheceu o projeto IFFRU 2020, este instrumento financeiro, e assumiu como sendo importante e uma boa oportunidade para ela também estruturar, ou conjuntamente com todas as outras medidas que estavam a ser criadas para revitalizar o território, a diversidade de empreendimentos e das funções a implementar e a aproveitar o apoio financeiro do IFFRU é muito diversificada. Está entre os serviços mais procurados na página da Câmara Municipal, o IFFRU 2020.
For BPI, this is truly a flagship project, combining the urban rehabilitation angle with social impact of the project. We have structured a financial instrument which we believe addresses the main persisting market failure for urban rehabilitation in Portugal. Work with the municipalities and work with the energy agency has been simplified by the work of the IFFRU Fund of Funds team. The project is located in the Madeira Island. I believe it's a project truly in sync with the municipality objective of valorizing cultural heritage for promoting sustainable tourism. The project made it possible to revitalize and boost the reputation of the area, not only economically, with 20 new jobs created, but also from a social point of view, as it was important for the community establishing this village and creating a sense of ownership and pride.
For Millennium BCP, IFFRU 2020 was an amazing opportunity to relaunch the business from real estate, industry and some architectural projects. The 3 main advantages of IFFRU: time, price and guarantee support. With that 3 framework, it's possible to fund projects now that would be impossible to fund before IFFRU. Casa dos Reclamos, it was a factory built up on the textile industry that we transformed to a digital fashion lab in the 2020s. This is a perfect example that IFFRU is an instrument for real estate, for industry, for textile, for promoters to pick up their opportunity and refurbish our economy.
Because of IFFRU, we were able to give longer maturities and better interest rates to our clients. We have created and structured 4 distinct financial products. They were based on the coverage of the several segments, namely individuals, companies, including municipality, non-profit entities and public entities. The project is in Coimbra. After rehabilitation, this building has 2 units for economic activities and 3 housing units. it's like economic growth and progress and social progress, they go together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event on cohesion policy financial instruments for REPowerEU and the new European Bauhaus. My name is Dave Keating. I'm a journalist based in Brussels, and I'm coming at you live from the European Commission headquarters in Brussels. We're going to be talking about finance instruments for two very important areas of EU policy, ones that I cover quite a lot as a journalist. They are two areas which are full of possibility and also really thinking about the energy transition. So we've got REPowerEU, which right now very much has the goal of transitioning away, particularly from Russian fossil fuels, but really from fossil fuels in general. And then we have the new European Bauhaus, which is looking at ways to make buildings more energy efficient, but also more fun, more aesthetically pleasing. It's a really interesting concept that's looking at how we can make architecture and how we can make the way that we interact with buildings more fun, more interactive, but also better for the societal goals that we all have in mind. So, before we started, you were watching a video that was featuring the IFFRU 2020 ESIF Fund of Funds set up in Portugal to support energy efficiency and urban development projects in housing and commercial buildings. Now, that video accompanies the written FICompass case study, which provides more detail about how the financial instruments were implemented, and you all should have received a link to that study. So here's how today is going to work. The first hour is going to be a roundtable where we'll be hearing some presentations, and I'll be asking our speakers some questions. And then we're going to move on to the thematic workshop in the second hour. And for that second thematic workshop, you guys at home will be able to ask your questions. I think you can see on the interface where you're watching right now, you'll see a place to type in your questions there. If you type them in, I will see them here on my tablet, and I will pose those questions to the participants in that second hour in the thematic workshop. So now let's start with the roundtable. Now, Just so you know, that today's event is being recorded. We, the panelists, are here online, but we're very much thinking about how this is going for you guys watching at home. We want to make this as interactive as possible, and of course, today's event is being recorded. Let's start with our two high-level speakers. We have with us here today Elisa Ferreira, European Commissioner for Cohesion and Reforms, with an announcement of the launch of the REPowerEU and new European Bauhaus financial instruments. And we have Lilyana Pavlova, Vice President of the European Investment Bank, who will talk about the European Investment Bank support for cohesion policy and the new financial instruments. Commissioner, I turn over the floor to you.
I think this is on. Yes, thank you very much. And dear Lilyana Pavlova, dear Minister and Abrunhosa, dear colleagues. In fact, as you correctly said, we are today faced with a double urgency. On one hand, to reduce Europe's dependence on fossil fuels. The first urgency is, in fact, climate change. And it has been very clear for some time now. As Commissioner responsible for the European Union Solidarity Fund, I am painfully aware of the devastating impact of repeated floods and fires across Europe. And this is a non-stop process. Devastating in their own right. They are also early warnings of a climate which is changing dramatically, and it's becoming more and more extreme. Second urgency is more recent, and it is, in fact, Russia's unprovoked and unjustified aggression against Ukraine. So Europe's dependence on Russian fossil fuel imports has, in fact, become much more evident, and has laid bare vulnerabilities in Europe and globally, and has imposed additional burden on our society, on our industry, on our economy, in a context of soaring energy prices. The European Commission swiftly put on the table a lot of instruments for the several crises. But in relation to this last one on energy, the Commission has put a plan to repower EU in response to the global energy market disruption caused by this Russian aggression and invasion of Ukraine. And this plan includes three main areas of work. One of them is to save energy. The other is to produce more clean energy, and also to diversify our energy supplies. And this is, in fact, the triple goal of REPowerEU: to press the fast forward button, to stand stronger on our green transition and on our climate objectives. But in fact, this project cannot only be about urgency. We cannot always live in urgency and crisis. We must offer our citizens, the Europeans, we must offer them hope and a vision for a better future. People should be in the center of this long-term effort. This should be a transition benefiting all members of society. And this, in fact, is the role of the new European Bauhaus. Design thinking and creative partnerships to find new ways of being sustainable that are not just green, but of high quality, blending style with inclusion, accessibility, and affordability. A human-centered green project which improves local areas and improves our lives. In fact, that's what we are all aiming at, better quality of life. And given these goals, solidarity, inclusion, improving the lives of people, ensuring that no region in Europe is left behind in this transformation, it is no surprise in this context that cohesion policy will play a central role in the achievement of both REPowerEU and in the new European Bauhaus objectives. We have in cohesion a strong record of investments in green energy, and this will continue. We estimate that cohesion policy will invest over 30 billion euros in measures at the regional level, and we are just addressing the direct impact that really will contribute to REPowerEU objectives. And this is only part of the overall investment of over 100 billion euros, which will go to green projects. We will invest in renewables, energy storage, integration of renewables into the electricity grids, in energy networks and connections at local level, in energy efficiency measures, in innovative approaches such as energy communities, for instance. Through our partnership with regional and local authorities and stakeholders, we will also build regional and local ownership of REPowerEU and its objectives, putting the energy transition at the heart of local decision-making. Our strong local links play a similar role in the new European Bauhaus. The initiative aims to help people and local communities everywhere in Europe. Bauhaus conversations revolve naturally around places and about geographical space. So we in cohesion policy will bring to the new European Bauhaus our many years of experience in local development, of course in partnership with local authorities and with the member states. And the new Bauhaus will bring to cohesion policy a new flair, I would call it, a new style, and inclusion in approaching local investments. The shift to renewable energy and the ambitious goals of the new European Bauhaus will require a redoubling of our effort. Dear colleagues, we need a force multiplier, and we need it to be easily available and easy to use. So today, we are very, very happy to launch two models for new financial instruments. First, a model energy efficiency financial instrument, and the model new European Bauhaus financial instrument. They provide tools to member states to deliver our common objectives on the ground. These instruments have been designed in close partnership with the European Investment Bank, and we have benefited from EIB's practical experience, as in many other circumstances. Financial instruments can act as a force multiplier for our cohesion investments because they will mobilize also private resources, and because the revolving nature of the funds means that they can be reinvested to support other projects later on. These instruments are flexible, simple to use, and can be tailored and adapted to many different situations. We have designed them so that they can be fitted to the different needs according to the different situations, the needs of businesses, of public authorities, and of individuals and households. To do this, we have made instruments, I would call it modular, with the possibility to combine many elements in different ways. For example, beneficiaries could get a grant for technical support to help them prepare viable investment projects to get market financing. Or a grant can be used as an incentive linked to performance in energy saving based on a loan. Or low-income households could even get a 100% grant for their investment as part of our goal to tackle a very serious issue, energy poverty. The new European Bauhaus financial instrument model translates the initiative's core values to a language easily understandable by the market. It can support a variety of innovative projects, and we are suggesting a number of examples and criteria for member states to identify great NEB ideas worthy of support. Of course, these ideas should be in line with local territorial development strategies. But most importantly, it supports investment that is people-centered and follows an open participatory approach. The possibilities, I would say, are almost endless. These are really instruments which can be combined and adapted to many different situations. So I urge member states and local authorities, regional authorities, to reflect upon what are the best combinations to make the best use of these instruments in synergy with their local context and their local needs. I count on the expertise of the IB, who can provide extensive advisory support as well. In conclusion, dear colleagues, our work today is prompted by a double urgency, but this is nothing less than an ambitious plan to build a better future. One with cleaner energy, better energy security, and a better lifestyle, so that no one, in fact, and in real life, is left behind in this transition. And as you know, for any ambitious building project, you need the right team and you need the right tools. With the IB and our regional and local partners, we have the right teams, the expertise of the IB and local knowledge, energy and motivation of our local partners. With these two financial instruments, we now have the tools too. So let us start on the job. Let us move to clean energy. Let us move to energy security. And let us move to a better and more local life, where design thinking brings us sustainability with style, with beauty. I invite member states to use these opportunities, and we in the European Commission are in fact ready to support them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for telling us about these new tools which, as you put it, can bring a new flair to cohesion policy. Let's now move on. You mentioned, Commissioner, the partnership with the EIB here, so let's hear more about the EIB's role in this. And hear next from Lilyana Pavlova, Vice President at the European Investment Bank.
Thank you very much, Dave. Good afternoon, dear Commissioner Ferreira, dear Elisa, dear Minister Abrunhosa, dear Anna, dear colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you everyone for the opportunity to be here today, both in this hybrid format in person and virtually. Thank you to everyone who joined us online. And also, on behalf of the European Investment Bank, I'm extremely happy and pleased to welcome today the launch of the two important financial instruments for REPowerEU and new European Bauhaus initiatives, as both of them will enhance and support the objectives of the European Green Deal and, of course, the European Investment Bank. As EU Climate Bank, we stand ready to fully support the implementation of these, I believe, extremely important instruments, especially at this very moment when we are indeed faced with two urgencies, with so many crises coming on the top of each other. So I believe it is indeed the very right moment when we are launching these two initiatives. These new models are also highlight the continued importance of cohesion policy, in particular in financing Europe's transition to low-carbon economy, and emphasize how financial instruments should play an ever-increasing role in delivering on this as a very economically efficient way, an instrument to deploy cohesion policy resources such as REGIO.F and others. Importantly, financial instruments have the potential to recycle scarce public finances and resources, and crucially leverage public and private sector investments to allow financing to be scaled up to meet ever-increasing investment needs in these sectors. So if we are to achieve the Paris commitments by 2030, we will need to mobilize private sector financing to both finance and to deliver the work to make our lives, our homes, our offices, workspace more energy efficient. Furthermore, as Commissioner Ferreira mentioned, following the devastating Russian invasion of Ukraine, we are more than ever aware of and understand the need to boost EU's energy security and resilience, most importantly, including, of course, the reduction of demand for different energy efficiency technologies and instruments. So for these reasons, of course, the EU bank, we are strongly committed not only to increase our support for cohesion regions, with special focus to less developed regions, ensuring also fair and just transition, which should be always our key priority, but also to step up our support for Europe's energy sector and to redouble our efforts to ensure that the financing is available to meet both EU's long-term commitments to reduce carbon emissions, as well as the immediate needs to bolster our energy resilience and energy security, diversification of resources, etc. And in order to respond to these challenges, we at the bank, we are increasing both our lending as well as our advisory support for investments in energy savings, diversification of energy supplies, decarbonization of industry, and acceleration of the rollout of renewable energy production. As we know, energy savings are the quickest and cheapest way to address the current energy crisis if we are to reduce the energy bills. And I could say that since 2019, energy investment financing has increased across all sectors, implementing the energy efficiency first principle. So the EIB's energy efficiency lending exceeded 10 billion euros in the last 2 years, and through its cost-saving nature, energy efficiency investment can really support a repayable financing with a clear multiplying effect, which is an important element of it. So I believe now huge effort will be needed, therefore, to shift from 100% based programs and investments, to which normally we were used so much so far, in order to move to the new reality of combined financing, combined grants and loans, or grants and repayable financing solutions as a better, more efficient way to deliver and to achieve our goals and targets. So ever since we launched the financial instruments in the programming period of 2007-13, when we started with Jessica and Jeremy, the EIB bank and the group, EIB group, has been working with strong partnership with the European Commission to promote using and having much more financial instruments. And I believe this work has been also consolidated in our joint FICOMPAS advisory platform since its launch in 2015. So and I should say here, we certainly appreciate very much the excellent partnership we have with the European Commission, and also of I'm really happy to say, this growing community of experienced practitioners across the member states in order to support the successful implementation, to support and to share, disseminate lessons learned, best practices on how we can use financial instruments. And I'm really glad today we will hear more from the experience, from the excellent examples we have in Portugal, in Bulgaria, in Slovakia. Since 2007 up to date, the EIB has provided more than 31 billion euro of loans in support of cohesion operational programs. And together with our fund, European Investment Fund, we have been managing financial instruments, nearly mobilizing 4.5 billion euro of cohesion financing on behalf of the managing authorities. So our financial and our mandate-funded firepower is complemented, of course, by a strong and experienced advisory team, advisory offering that can really provide the managing authorities and our partners both with technical and financial expertise, providing really the support needed and necessary to successfully establish and implement different financial instruments. In that way, of course, we as the EIB, we have established a unique market position thanks to this extensive experience and technical knowledge covering the entire financial instruments life cycle, from product design to implementation, management, and also financing. So I should say that based on this experience, based on our knowledge and experience, as also Commissioner mentioned, we are happy that to be able to contribute to the design of these two model financial instruments which we are launching today. Because technical assistance and advisory definitely can play a role to accelerate the implementation of the energy efficiency investments and to achieve the ambitious goals we have ahead of us. And financing alone is often not sufficient. In order to realize this project, we also need to help and to provide necessary support to our promoters, especially to those who have limited capacity, such as smaller municipalities, SMEs, or private individuals and promoters, and they need to receive and to get our support. And here, for the InvestEU Advisory Hub, which also includes great initiatives like Elena Initiative, FICOMPASS Mandate, really have enhanced the provision of technical assistance and advisory support in order to increase the value added of the EU funding and also of the EIB's financial offer. And the new model financial instruments for energy efficiency developed together with, in the partnership with the Commission and between the Commission and the EIB as part of the REPowerEU package really provides the member states with a blueprint for combining loans and grants to incentivize and provide affordable financing to final beneficiaries, supporting those most vulnerable and affected by the dramatic recent increase of the energy prices. And the new European Bauhaus provides another opportunity and another important dimension of the Green Deal, the one on which the bank is equally strongly committed and ready to support to ensure that the huge program of investment by the EU to support the recovery from the pandemic also benefits all EU citizens. So today marks the start of the work to design and set up the right financial instruments to support the transition and to overcome all the challenges we are all facing. And we urgently need more investments in energy transition. Financial instruments, therefore, of course, combined with grants, can make a difference and can make it happen. That's why, therefore, I really hope that the models we are launching today will provide, indeed, the practitioners across the EU with the inspiration they need in order to start designing as soon as possible their own financial instruments. And the EIB advisory services are ready and fully available to support all of you, all our partners, managing authorities, national promotional institutions, project promoters, and other partners in this endeavor in order to make it a success story. And of course, we are ready, and we are already working and quite busy in some member states which were more advanced, and we are looking forward further extending our activities and our support to meet the demand of other member states and our other promoters in order this initiative to become a reality. And as Commissioner Ferreira said in conclusion, I can only align with this. Only together we can achieve, and only together if we team up with the combined package and efforts, we can make this endeavor a success story. So I wish you all a success, and indeed united we can make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vice President Pavlova. So now we're going to hear some feedback from 3 particular member states, Portugal, Slovakia, and Bulgaria. For that, we're joined here in the room by Anna Abrunhosa, Minister for Territorial Cohesion in Portugal, Eva Petkova, Director of the Sustainable Cities Fund in Bulgaria, and joining us remotely, we have Martin Polonyi, Director General of the International Relations Section of the Ministry of Finance for Slovakia. Minister Abrunhosa, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your feedback about these funds.
Thank you, Dave. First of all, let me thank you the invitation and greet our dear Commissioner, Elisa Ferreira, the Vice President of EIB, and the speakers of this roundtable. So, IFFRU 2020 is a financial instrument for urban rehabilitation and revitalization. And why did you need IFFRU 2020? Next. Nearly 60% of our population lives in urban areas, and we have too many buildings that need improvement, rehabilitation, and 28% of the primary energy consumption comes from housing and services sectors, the most relevant in urban areas. So the energy efficiency and the renovation of the cities was our main mission, quite aligned with the REPowerEU and the Bauhaus, the new European Bauhaus. Next. We combined public money with funds from commercial banks, and we combine, in what concerns public money, European funds from Portugal 2020, and we had an extraordinary experience with the European Investment Bank. So this is the time to thank you, your support, your advisory support. It was very, very important, and we also had the support of the Council of Europe Development Bank. The IFFRU 2020 mobilizes a budget of 1.4 billion euros, generating an investment of 2 billion euros. Next. IFFRU offers very good conditions, as the first film said, for investment. Maturity goes up to 20 years, and grace period during the investment period can go until 4 years. It is quite interesting comparing with the banking instruments of support. And the interest rates are well below the market rates because the part of the European funds does not charge an interest rate. Next. When implementing, the mainly condition, and it is a mandatory conditions that we should have an overall rehabilitation of buildings aged 30 years or more. We do not have restrictions in what concerns the range of entities eligible for funding. So we can, I said this before, but I should underline, for the first time in the Portuguese history of European funds, we directly benefited Portuguese families. So families can benefit directly from IFFRU 2020. This is what we mean European Union closer to its citizens, and it was a great experience in what concerns housing. We do not have restrictions on the use of buildings, so we can have renovate buildings for housing, economic activities, or equipment for public use. And we do not predefine the application deadlines. So we had the banks, and when the families, the companies, the municipalities had a project, they went to the bank and proposed and asked for the loan. We can, next please, we can already show good results. As you can see, we generated more housing. This is very important in the old part of our urban areas. We generated jobs and more energy efficient buildings. Next. We already have around 400 financing contracts throughout the country. These contracts represent 1.2 billion euros of investment. And also, as you can see, the north of Portugal and Lisbon are the more dynamic regions of the country. Next. And we have many projects already being financed through the country. We have projects in 87 cities, projects ongoing, and we already have more than 100 buildings already renovated. So this is very good when we talk about the old part of these cities and help them to gain new centrality. This is about people. This is about places. This is about renovating cities. So this is about the concept of the new Bauhaus, and the main lessons that we can say. Before IFFRU, we had Jessica, and we also learned with Jessica. So we have a professional team that is charged with IFFRU. This is very important, to have capacity, to know what we are doing. And we have a good network. We have a focal point in each municipality. We have a protocol with the National Portuguese Municipalities Association, and in each municipality we have a focal point that gives information and helps the companies, the families to go to the bank. And these financial instruments, they are difficult to explain, they are complex. So we implemented a good communication strategy, direct communication sessions throughout the country. The idea was to transform a complex product in something that is simple and easy for public and families to understand. I think we succeed this, and we also did a different thing from Jessica. In Jessica, we had a bank in a region. Now the banks, they are all in the same region, so they compete. And we have better loan conditions because they compete. And it was an experience from Jessica. I can tell you that with IFFRU, we can combine loans with financial instruments, because municipalities, they have loans in the operational regional programs, but they started to apply to IFFRU for the first time. And now they became aware of the importance of not having investment dependent on grants only. This is very good, and we want to reinforce this, that municipalities more and more use financial instruments, and then they combine them with the grants. Next. Just some examples. Here in Oporto, we have a hotel before and after. Next, housing in Coimbra, in the historic part of Coimbra, and next in Lisbon, housing. So before we had degradation, no people. Now we have renovated cities with young couples, and our intention is to have IFFRU 2030, because the experience was very good, and we still want to work with the European Bank because it was a very, very good experience. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Some really, really stark contrast, I think, between those old photos and those new photos. That's quite impressive. Let's now go remotely to Martin Polonyi in Slovakia for his intervention on the use of financial instruments in Slovakia to support cohesion policy. Martin?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So, dear Commissioner, dear Minister, dear Lilyana, dear colleagues, thank you for your invitation to this panel and also for the warm welcome. As you can see, I have chosen to participate in a very energy efficient manner, and I have to say this was not my choice. My plans were actually cancelled. So very pleased to meet you all virtually. On the topic of today, there are two model instruments being presented. One which is targeting the future of the concept of urbanism, as such, aiming at spurring innovation and launch a competition of ideas. I find it very interesting and exciting. And the second model is something I would call a masterpiece of what the European Structural and Investment Fund can actually deliver in terms of energy efficiency, as well as the deep renovation of buildings. I will spare a few words specifically on this one. So once again, I come from the Ministry of Finance. I'm besides the official position, I'm responsible for coordinating the financial instruments in Slovakia. That's why I'm the one intervening here from Slovakia. And coming from the Ministry of Finance, we put a lot of emphasis traditionally in seeking efficiencies from the point of view of public finance. In other words, we try to achieve the most for the smallest expenditure. Hence, historically, we were very keen to use the future energy savings generated by energy efficiency to finance the investment needed to achieve them. This is normally the most talked about in the area of public buildings, and it is also an enabler of the use of financial instruments here. So in Slovakia, we focused our effort on public buildings and on the energy performance contracts. First thing to do was the regulatory clarity. We needed the guidance from the Eurostat and translated it in the national legislation. We created the model contract. This was approved by Eurostat, etc. The idea was to allow any manager of public building to do the necessary renovations on his building in a relatively simple procedure without the need to budget for the capital expenditure, and as well at the macro level without increasing the public debt. This is the part interesting for the ministries of finance. The take-up was not super, actually. It was more, I have to say, slow. And the biggest hurdle seemed to be that the numbers in the business models on each individual building did not always add up. And this is where today's financial instrument model comes into play. The low intensity grant combined with the loan can significantly improve the feasibility of any such projects. And for it to work, it needs to be easy, which it is, as it is actually coming in one operation, and it is based on the rules which are applicable to financial instruments, which gives the managing authority and the implementing bodies somewhat bigger flexibility. And it also needs to be coordinated, as these types of projects will not work when they compete in the market with 100% grants. It just doesn't work. Most of us, most of the managers of public buildings tend to prefer the traditional way, but the traditional way is actually able to reach less. So if we have a certain amount of money, we can do this amount of the project for this amount of money. But the financial instruments added to this can significantly increase the impact, actually. So for instance, we have decreased the maximum intensity of grants throughout all the programs in Slovakia to 60%. Let's hope this will work. So I'm mostly speaking of public buildings, but the same logic goes for residential buildings. So we have basically still in the years 2000 introduced a program in Slovakia which was based on a combination of grant element for the capital expenditure and a loan to multi-apartment dwellings. And this was a tremendous success, and it has allowed us to later on go only to grants that incentivize only on the interest rate. This has led to 71% of the target multi-dwelling apartment buildings being at least partially renovated. So, and the program goes on. It was possible thanks to a sound legal environment also, I have to say, because thanks to this, banks, commercial banks regard these loans as almost risk-free. It helps a lot to attract the private financing. So similar schemes based on this model are then possible in the corporate sector, and especially also when integrating the renewables. So I believe the tools presented today will empower us all to reach the REPowerEU objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. Finally, let's turn to Eva Petkova, who will tell us a bit more about how the Sustainable Cities Fund in Bulgaria is using these instruments.
Thank you, Dave. Commissioner Ferreira, Vice President Pavlova, Minister Abrunhosa, colleagues. Thank you for having me at such a high-level event for launching these two very important new financial instruments. As regards the implementation of financial instruments in the Bulgarian context, I would like to give the viewpoint of the financial intermediary. I am part of Sustainable Cities Fund, which is an urban development fund for Sofia and southern Bulgaria. Bulgaria's accession in the European Union was in 2007. And back then, Fund FLAG, a very important financial institution, a state-owned one, was created in order to support municipal investments. In 2012, Fund FLAG acted quite proactively and took part in the procedure for the first urban development fund selected under JESSICA initiative by European Investment Bank, and thus started the whole implementation of financial instruments in Bulgarian context. Two were the main preconditions for the successful uptake of financial instruments: the creation of a local targeted municipal fund and the creation of a targeted fund of funds in 2016. Who was established as a holding fund institution which gathered expertise in the sphere of management of financial instruments. In 2018 were selected the urban development funds that are currently operating, the Sustainable Cities Fund and the Regional Development Fund that manage three urban development funds for different territories in Bulgaria. In 2020, Fund FLAG, together with the Bulgarian Fund of Funds and the European Investment Bank, took a strategic step for establishing a more detailed and more comprehensive relationship for Bulgarian municipalities, whatever of their scope and their size, and the Bulgarian Investment and Advisory Platform step providing complementary funding to the urban development funds. Next, please. Up to now, we may say that for the last 10 years, the performance of the financial instruments for urban development is quite satisfying. We have been effectively recycling JESSICA funds over the long term. More than 30% of public reflows have been reinvested into new projects. We managed to mobilize additional private co-financing, almost doubling the available resource. Additional expertise was supported through the banks, and we are glad that both financial intermediaries have in their broader partnership one of the biggest Bulgarian banks. We managed to address funding gaps, especially for viable projects by private promoters, but also we managed to encourage the recovery of public investments after COVID pandemic. Next, please. What are the country-specific characteristics of the urban development funds? We had quite a broad context for financing, from urban regeneration to cultural heritage, from retail parks that regenerate industrial zones to sustainable urban mobility. The Urban Development Fund was structured as a debt instrument with an embedded capped portfolio guarantee, enabling riskier projects to be financed. Two are the main challenges that we encountered. First, with the targeted energy efficiency retail product, and second, with the first projects implemented with combination of support, grant and financial instrument up to 85% grant, which was structured in two operations for targeted sectors only, namely cultural infrastructure and development of cultural heritage sites of national and world importance. We are currently implementing more than 25 such projects, and in the next slides I would like to present you one of the first projects that has been implemented with combination of support, grant and financial instruments, structured in two operations. This project is with part financial instruments that exceeds the grant. You may see it's 60% financial instrument. It is for a renovation of a cultural center in the very center of Burgas. It is of Burgas municipality. And this project envisages a total renovation of this cultural center and a complete new contemporary look which corresponds to the surroundings. And I thought this is a very good example of a pilot project that corresponds to new European Bauhaus values of aesthetics, sustainability, inclusiveness, because all these values have been very successfully included in this project. It has been structured through an architectural contest. The sustainability measures are an obligatory part of all these cultural infrastructural projects, and inclusiveness criteria have been identified and have been put into place too. Next slide, please. So we have seen a total renovation, a new invigorated space, which is now filled with international film festivals, but also with yoga and ballet classes for the youngest. So it's a very, very nice project with a new European Bauhaus spirit. Next slide, please. The lessons learned from these projects and from the ongoing projects with combination of support, we may say that combination of support in two operations is quite complex. It leads to many difficulties and to quite substantial delays. But when the financial instrument exceeds the grant, it seemed to be quite good working example. And if structured in one operation, it will be very, very important, mainly for the final recipients, in order to structure such investments in a timely fashion. It's very important that technical support for such ambitious project to be delivered. Here it was provided in the former programming period as a grant part, but the delays in the implementation led to quite a lag between the project design and our implementation. Next, such projects similar to new European Bauhaus values are already implemented, but we should see that reporting on the results and impacts, the monitoring, needs some adjustments in order to be fully in line with the new European Bauhaus initiative. This mural I would like, I insisted to show you because it very well represents how the transformation really happens. This mural was found in this center during the deconstruction works. It was from the 70s, and it was totally reconstructed. This mural represents, in fact, a traditional Bulgarian Nestinari dance. It's UNESCO intangible asset. But what I would like to conclude is that there can't be transformation without decisiveness. This picture represents women dancing on barefoot on embers, but in fact, our experience with cohesion policy really was learning through experience, learning with a little bit pain, but in fact, it is up to the dedication and the devotion that we really believe that in the future we can make and manage to implement these new ambitious financial instrument models and support people mainly and the development of our cities and the future of our next generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva. So we are running a bit short on time, but I do want to ask a question for the Commissioner and Vice President, because I was curious, Commissioner, we know that there's a lot of grant financing available. Could you explain to us what's the difference or what's the advantage of financial instruments when there's so much grant financing available? And what do you expect to see from the implementation of cohesion policy specifically through financial instruments?
Well, that is a very important question, because sometimes we think, okay, we've got lots of grants. Yes, we have got lots of grants, but we have lots of needs as well. The preliminary estimates of how much should be needed in order to implement our Green European agenda before the invasion of Ukraine was estimated in 1.5 trillion euros. Because if really we want to have by 2050 zero impact of climate impact of Europe, we have got to change everything in our lives. We have got to change the way we commute, the way we travel, the way we live, how you heat your house, how you control the temperature in the place where you work, what kind of products you buy, how you package them. So it's a massive transformation. And so if you compare the grants that are available, and I agree that they are quite substantial, but also our ambitious targets of building back better, so building back on a basis of a green agenda, of an innovation agenda, we have got to be quite demanding and leave the grants for those aspects that cannot be easily done without these grants. So I think member states are asked really to stimulate this rethinking, this revolution, but at the same time to be quite focused, because the grants are supposed to fill market gaps, to fill these kind of needs without grants will never be solved. And I'm talking, for instance, of investments in poorer regions, or investments that are so demanding, and in the past we had things like that, like if you really want to have proper supply of the basic products such as water, you need some support to do a sustainable initial investment. Then you are supposed to run the system by itself. But the initial impetus, you will never be able to have a reasonable price for the water if you don't have this initial impulse. And so, so we have got to ask member states, together with support of the IB, to be very, very rational and very demanding in what shall be done or should be done through grants, and what should be done with a mixture of grants and loans. And this is why I think this flexibility that is embodied in these instruments are in itself a value added. Of course, cohesion is there, and cohesion is in fact to support more those that cannot help themselves. So that's the reason why, of course, all countries have problems, but we support more those that are less able to solve their internal problems by themselves. And I think the same, mutatis mutandis, the same kind of logic should be extended in terms of this energy revolution, but also doing it right. And so sometimes, and we also in Cohesion are already opening this possibility of financing technical assistance for those that have difficulty in understanding how they can do it in practical terms, or to combine loans and grants, and for instance, to look at also at affordable houses and this kind of houses in which, and I tried to mention it in the initial words, this situation where the people that live in those houses, they are absolutely unable to raise the funds by themselves in order to do some sort of even energy saving, because the initial cost and their credibility near the normal commercial banks is often, not sufficient to get an adequate loan. So I think this is the kind of logic on which we think the role of a multiplier of the capacity of the investment capacity of the instruments is in itself a very, very important value added in implementing a generalized renewable, but a renewable that in fact covers all those that also have more difficulty in raising the financial means to do the right thing, or have the difficulty in finding how to do it. So this is also very demanding for the intermediary agents that really have to incorporate now a lot of other elements, in particular those that come from the Bauhaus, that together with the requirements for the kind of energy investments that the EU should do, is really quite demanding. But of course, that's why we are working with very experienced people and institutions, and we count on them to be able to absorb this innovation and this new way to address development that is in itself the concept of sustainable development in its full length. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense. So grants really for where those market gaps are causing the biggest problem. Vice President Pavlova, a question for you. We know that in terms of financing or guarantees for energy efficiency, that's nothing new for the EIB. The EIB has been doing that for many years, as well as advisory and technical assistance support. So what's different this time around? What's different about these instruments?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I should say that, as we already heard from some excellent examples around the table, and as Commissioner said, we do have certain sectors, certain projects, which definitely cannot go along without grant funding. But at the same time, now we have not only much more awareness, but quite a good examples and lessons learned, really to see the real benefits and to see the advantages of financial instruments, and some excellent models which we can now replicate, like the IFFRU, which was just presented, and we heard. We have an excellent example, for example, in Lithuania, where we also set up a kind of energy efficiency financial instrument together with the partnership of the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Environment, which was also recently very well described in the recent FICOMPAS case study, and which really emphasizes on how a loan and guarantee products can be well combined with different types of grant instruments, in order to finance really ambitious program. Because back then, when it was launched in 2010, this fund for Jessica was started only with some 170 million euro. And step by step, throughout the years, in 10 years experience, now we've managed, thanks to the indeed financial instrument established, to mobilize more than 1 billion euro in support and financing energy efficiency of these multi-family block apartments, which is really a great example. So you have this, at the end of the day, we have viable projects, much more efficient investment financing, multiplier effect This is of course what makes the difference. And last but not least, the recycling nature. You can reinvest the funds in similar projects, in replicating projects, or expanding the scope of activities. And I think this is exactly the opportunity which we now have under the instrument which we are launching today as part of this REPowerEU, is really to based on lessons learned and excellent examples we have in the different countries, to further replicate and to have it done in different countries. And this model financial instruments, based on our expertise, based on our experience, really now very well describes in detail how exactly loans can be combined with grants, and provide kind of a ready platform ready to be used by the member states. So there is no need anymore kind of to invent the wheel, but they just can use it as a very good starting point, starting basis. And then of course each country, each region has its specificities. It could be then very easily adapted with our advisories also support offered to be adapted to address the specific needs, because in different regions of course we need to be very agile and to have this kind of a flexibility.
Great. So I'm conscious we're over time, but I do want to ask the Minister one quick question first. And that question is about the future, when we're looking toward new financial instruments to meet the future challenges that regions in Portugal might face. How can the models be adapted when you're thinking toward those future challenges?
We have always the risk to do the same as before, and in the present, we cannot dare ourselves to have that risk. So we have to put our resources in what transforms our world today, and in what concerns public investment and even private investment. So in financial instruments, we have to focus more. So we have to be sure that €1 that we invest will transform our neighborhoods. We have to focus more on energy efficient projects. We have to be sure that we save energy. We have to be sure that we face and solve the energy poverty that we have in too many buildings. And it was a question that we didn't put in our minds 20 years ago. Now we have, the pressure of solving big problems that we didn't see coming. Think about energy independence. So new ways of becoming independent, creating energy for self-consumption. This is mandatory in what concerns public and private investment. And we have to have local and regional and national strategies that fit together, and the investments that we do locally and regionally and nationally, they have to be integrated. So we can have national rules and we can have measures that fit to local necessities, but we should have the same strategy and the same path. Money, grants or loans, they should transform our company, they should transform our public buildings, they should transform the way we live. And it is so important to, and I congratulate the Commission for the two important initiatives, the REPowerEU and the new European Bauhaus. These are not completely new concepts, but they make us to feel the urgency to do this path. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you to all the panelists for your insights here on these new instruments. I think that's going to be very useful for people watching at home. We're now going to take a quick 5-minute technical break. During that break, you guys will see 2 videos. The first video is illustrating how ERDF financial instruments can use cohesion policy resources to mobilize private investment for energy efficiency projects in the EU. The second illustrates how ERDF-powered long-term loans finance the modernization of the Contemporary Art Center and Library in Burgas, Bulgaria. So we'll see you back here in 5 minutes.
In Burgas, we have managed to implement two of the first projects that have been realized with a combination of support, grant and financial instruments. One of these projects is the current one, the Contemporary Art Center and Library, and the second one is the Cultural Center NHK, which is in the very center of the city. They are both projects for improving of the cultural infrastructure and are quite a good example of how smaller municipalities can really develop their environment and respond to the needs of their citizens.
I studied in King's College London, and because of COVID I had to come back and be with my family, and staying in your room and trying to concentrate there, it's very hard. I actually really like these rooms. I have my own place there which I like to take every single day. It's close to the windows. It's more of a secret spot, so there are not a lot of people there, which is also perfect for concentration. There's a huge collection of vinyls and also a record player, which is also nice because it's even a good gathering place for me and for my friends.
Before it served as a school, then it was shortly used as a hospital, but in the last 20 years it was abandoned. Through the European Development Fund, we managed to do a whole reconstruction of the building. The building is energy efficient. In terms of digitalizing the archives of the library, search through QR codes, and some of the books which are very, very old and have to be preserved are scanned. Most of the other things which are connected to innovative design are 3D printers that are used here for teaching kids, and also we have interactive boards that they can play with. The needs which are met are mostly social, because the Contemporary Arts Museum and Library, for example, was spread into 4 different locations. The support of the Sustainable Cities Fund was very important in the beginning, so that we can set up a stable financial program that can be supported, and also afterwards in the execution of the project, so that we can meet the expectations from the municipality on one side and from the people on the other.
The Sustainable Cities Fund has managed to build a bridge between the municipalities and the banks. The fund of funds provides 59% of the financing of the Sustainable Cities Fund. Also, the fund of funds supports us in finding the best solutions to our projects and many issues that arise during their implementation.
I believe the main success factor for those two projects and all the projects at all is the perfect collaboration between different stakeholders, such as the managing authority, the FMFIB as a fund of funds, the financial intermediaries, the final recipients.
Успешното използване на финансовите инструменти за период 2007-2013 година по линията на Джесика ни даде възможност да разширим кръга и за период 2014-2020 година да използваме 6 пъти по-голям финансов ресурс по линията на Европейски фонд за регионално развитие. В същото време насочихме и финансовата подкрепа чрез финансови инструменти от 7 града на 39, които се финансират за период 2014-2020. Финансовите инструменти ще продължат да имат ключова роля за финансиране на проекти и за следващият програмен период и по отношение на цифровият преход и климатичната неутралност. В тази връзка след пандемията COVID, финансовите инструменти ще продължат да бъдат използвани по линията на най-засегнатите сектори в България, а това са туризъм, култура и транспорт.
The financial instruments are policy-driven mechanism that delivers policy objectives. But their firepower is in their flexibility, in their simplicity. There's a lot of possibilities for financial instruments in the next programming period, especially with the new simplifications in the CPR to timely provide the needed resource to municipalities or to private investors.
Okay, welcome back everyone to the thematic workshop on FiCompass. For this, we still have Martin and Eva here with us, Eva who you just saw in that last video. We're going to be talking now about FiCompass, which is a platform for advisory services on financial instruments managed under the European Structural and Investment Funds. It's provided by the European Commission in partnership with the EIB, and it supports ESIF managing authorities and other interested parties. For this workshop, you guys at home are going to be able to ask your questions to the panelists. You can type them in there in the bar next to the screen. We've already had some questions come in, so thanks for that. I would like to first hand over the floor to Jonathan Denness, Head of Unit at DG Regio in the European Commission. Jonathan?
Thank you, Dave, and welcome everybody. What I want to do is to sort of set out in a little bit more detail than we've done at the previous session what the models are and what they're about and how they can be used. These models are designed for managing authorities. They're designed for to help managing authorities create financial instruments in their cohesion policy programs. They're about investment. They're about people. And they're designed to create efficient and effective financial instruments. So how can these models be used? Well, one of the key factors in the model is the issue of combinations. And as Eva said in the previous session, combinations in previous programming periods have been rather complex and rather difficult to implement. So we've simplified the rules this time, and we've allowed both grants and loans or equity or guarantees to be provided in one operation with one set of rules, the financial instrument rules. And this new possibility in the Common Provisions Regulation is the core of what these two models are designed to do. To combine grants and financial instruments in the same operation. For example, on energy efficiency, the grant can carry out an energy audit to assess the needs of the building, and then the loan can finance the works, leading to the energy savings and leading to the possibility of the final recipient being able to repay the loan. So the grant financial instrument combination is a very, very powerful one, and is the fundamental principle behind these two models. Secondly, we've designed the models to be flexible, so they can really benefit everybody, and address, as the Commission said in the previous session, address issues such as energy poverty through the possibility that some investment in some buildings can be 100% grant, because the overall grant loan rate is established at the level of the financial instrument. So individual investments can vary from that, and the overall restriction of the financial instrument, the loan part having to be greater than the grant part, applies globally across the entire instrument, not at individual investment level. So that means that more people can benefit. Now, in the CPR, we have set out 5 policy objectives, which all investments have to follow. These 5 objectives are smart, green, connected, more social, and closer to citizens. And these models can address all of these policy objectives. There is a possibility of addressing all of them, not necessarily in the same financial instrument, but instruments can be designed to deliver all of these policy objectives. Another important point is that the two models are not mutually exclusive. There may be some managing authorities who when they look at their programme and are setting up a financial instrument, may decide that they have a choice, that they can either use the new European Bauhaus model or use the energy efficiency model. Now, we think this is a good thing. We will. It allows you to tailor the financial instrument to meet the policy objectives of your programme. So for energy efficiency, it can address issues like renewables, climate adaptation, but above all, a reduction of energy use, which is so important in today's world. And then for the new European Bauhaus, you can have a broad mix of investment, regenerating areas, but above all, reaching people, and that is part of the fundamentals of the new European Bauhaus. So, to finish, we in the Commission, and together with colleagues in the EIB, we can help you implement these models, and we will say a little bit more about that shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Next, we have Frank Lee, who's Head of Climate and Social Finance Advisory Division at the European Investment Bank. Frank, tell us a little bit about your perspective on this coming from FICOMPAS and the EIB.
Okay, that's a bit better. Sorry about that. And good afternoon to everyone online as well as here today. I won't take too much time because I think it's better we spend more time with the experts here at the table and also listening to questions from the audience. And I also won't try to repeat what Jonathan was saying in the introduction. I mean, maybe three important points. Obviously, we are delighted to be part of this launch of these two very, very important instruments. They are coming at a very, very important point in time. It's very timely, of course, given all the messages that you heard this morning from the Commissioner and Vice President. And we're obviously, through the FICOMPAS, very happy to have brought EIB's vast knowledge and expertise of having worked in these areas for many years now, probably beyond decades, in fact. And so we're more than happy to be in partnership with the Commission through FICOMPASS and being able to contribute to this and putting our knowledge out there for others to use. Indeed, the instruments that you have, and obviously we would encourage you to read through them, they're quite detailed and quite explanatory, are really not, I mean, they're meant to be guidance, obviously. They're meant to be giving ideas, inspiration, and definitely will not be a one-size-fits-all. We obviously see that from my experience across Europe, that there are different ways in which these instruments can be implemented, but nevertheless it draws on, as I say, the experience that we've had, and I think they are pretty good models to be used and replicated if possible. And the last point is really that these instruments are, as Jonathan say, for the first time making use of the great flexibility that we see in the CPR, the ability to be able to combine grants and loans in a single operation. This is something that we all were putting forward in the past program period. The practitioners were all wanting this, and now we have it. Now we need to make it work. And as the Commissioner and others were saying this morning, the demand right now is so huge for investment, particularly in these two areas, that we definitely do need to find ways of combining grants and loans. And I think these two models are very good examples of how that can be done. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Frank. So let me introduce our remaining panelists for the thematic roundtable. So we have Emma Toledo Laredo, Director for Better Implementation, Closure, and Program Implementation 3 at DG Regio in the European Commission. And we have Christoph Kuhn, Director for the Mandate Management Department at the European Investment Bank. Emma, tell me, what role can financial instruments play in the achievement of the cohesion policy objectives in the programs of your MS?
Thank you very much, Dave, and hello to everybody, and thank you very much for having me here. I'm quite happy to give, let's say, my own perspective also from the negotiations that we are currently still running with the member states in my geography, that is Germany, the Netherlands, Austria, Poland, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic. The negotiations for the new programs for the period 2021-2027, where indeed in the discussion, in those negotiations, the element, the promotion for financial instruments is not always an easy task. And, indeed we hear the managing authorities are challenged by 2 years of COVID, they're challenged by the Ukrainian crisis, they're challenged by their workload, and so let's say the instinct to go for innovative practices is not always there. So I think it's very good that we have these initiatives and this launch initiative today to really show a bit what are the advantages. And in any case, our commissioner referred to massive transformation. This is really what the 2021-2027 period is about, and what the cohesion funds for that period are about. This is really about profound transformations of our societies and profound transformations within our regions. And we do have some good examples from the previous period where also our instruments adapted to take the lessons learned from them. So it's and this is also independently from the level, the economic development level of the regions that actually went already and are going for financial instruments. That's also an important point. So for future generations, and for present generations, it's really important that we go this way, and that we do not take business as usual approach, and we go for innovative approaches. So let me try to identify a few advantages to reply to your question, Dave, now. So financial instruments are key in achieving cohesion policy, basically because investments need far outweigh available public funds. So financial instruments can mobilize private resources and can be reused multiple times, as the Vice President Pavlova also mentioned. In terms of calendar, using financial instruments actually allows for a faster implementation of the investment, because capital is available upfront, and you don't, not only after the investment has been carried out. Also, supporting investments through financial instruments very often brings better and more sustainable results, because the obligation to repay a debt actually forces the investors to implement projects that are better prepared. In addition, we should not also underestimate the other advantages for a public authority to use financial instruments, such as building capacity, supporting the development of the financial markets, and supporting the less developed regions where financing is not available or affordable. As you have heard before me, member states are actually using financial instruments under a variety of policy objectives. Slovakia, for example, plans to implement a financial instrument under each specific objective for the future period, which demonstrates the wide-ranging usefulness of these instruments. Both Czechia and Poland are planning to combine loans and grants in one operation in the area of energy efficiency in some of their programs. However, as I said before, we see member states still, reluctant to use financial instruments for energy efficiency and pushing for using the grant. But I hope, as I said, that today's discussion and the launch of these two models, will really contribute to propel authorities to allocate higher amounts to financial instruments operation. And actually, you may also wonder about the effect of growing inflation, which may actually, in our minds, maybe instinctively think, okay, that's a higher risk. But actually, in period of growing inflation, the debt weight for borrowers will decrease faster than in the period of low inflation. So with interest rates being raised by all central banks, cohesion policy financial instruments can play an even bigger role and can efficiently complement the commercial financing, for example, by using interest rate subsidies when needed. As far as the new European Bauhaus is concerned, well, member states should not be afraid to implement those projects of the NEB through financial instruments. There is a lot of expertise already in the member states from the Jessica investments, as we have heard before us, on which you can really build on. And the model presented today really aims at translating the NEB initiative into concrete language for managing authorities and financial intermediaries. The NEB model can be useful to make financing more affordable for delivering projects sustainably, facilitating the partnership approach, which is so key in cohesion policy, and increasing local people's ownership of the investment. And I also need to make an important note related to the Green Deal. The models can also be useful under the Just Transition Fund, which is a key element of the Green Deal. For example, in Poland, in the Malopolska region, authorities plan to use financial instruments for the regeneration of former mines and industrial plants. And similar brownfield regeneration projects could be delivered in line with the goals of the new European Bauhaus. Why not revitalize these sites in a sustainable, inclusive, aesthetic way through financial instruments? And of course, we very much count on the expertise of the EIB to support member states with their expertise and financing to deliver on the ambitious objectives of the new European Bauhaus and REPowerEU. So we are here really to support and convince member states. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So let's talk about specifically how to support managing authorities. Christoph, how will the EIB support these managing authorities in implementing these new financial instruments?
Thank you, Dave, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a very good but also very wide question. I'm trying to narrow down a few points. Let me just say, first of all, we've had many years of experience in working together, hand in hand with managing authorities and also the European Commission, notably DG REGIO, in developing and implementing financial instruments. Overall, if I look at our current portfolio, we run about 9 billion euros of financial instruments portfolio, and we've done this with about 17 managing authorities across many regions of different needs. Let me just say that the two core areas have been and will be in the area of urban development, but also in the area of energy efficiency and renewable energy. So those two areas that we are talking about today will remain a core focus of our activities. Now, maybe just to say a few very basic words. When we work together with managing authorities in setting up financial instruments, our service ranges from the very conceptual phase when we look at market failures, market needs, when we are producing ex-ante studies, when we are about to design the basic concept of financial instruments. But then our service also continues during the contracting phase, during the phase of handling flows of money, during the phase of actually implementing then financial intermediaries, run open calls for interest, but then also offer middle office services later on down the road. So we have a full range of services that we provide. Now in the new program period, EIB wants to build on this and wants to expand on these services, wants to deepen our partnership with managing authorities and the European Commission. And I would like to rehearse a little bit what Emma just said, which is that business as usual is not the name of the game. We want to adapt to the needs that are changing. We are living in very challenging times, and we know that financial instruments, in particular various models of combination, can play an absolute crucial role in solving certain challenges. Now, what I think is absolutely key is that when we talk about combinations, that we think this combination possibility from the side of the client, of a promoter who implements a project. It has to be seamless, it has to be simple, it has to be also modular, because not always all forms of combinations are fit for purpose for a given project. So this kind of plug and play logic is something that we definitely would like to promote and build on. I'm not saying that this is always very easy. There's still some way to go for us and for managing authorities to design such combination models, but in any case, we know that also from past experiences, which were more complex than it is now, that the combination of grants and financial instruments with advisory services, I would specifically mention advisory as a key third component, is going to be crucial to unlock investment, especially in areas where returns are not sufficiently high for a loan or equity instrument to deliver in full the investment impact, particularly in the area of energy efficiency. Despite the current oil prices, what we see is that investment is still not happening everywhere to the extent we would wish to see that, and therefore we believe that using just enough grants to then have a project that can indeed then repay a certain amount of debt or provide indeed a return on an equity investment is the way to go. It will allow us to unlock investment that would otherwise not happen. And this sort of one-stop shop logic for a promoter, in my view, is absolutely essential. Promoters should be able to access all combination and sources of funds in one go. And therefore, I think, we need to pay particular attention on how this one-stop shop is going to be designed in the future. Let me just say, because you asked what else we can do, another thing that we normally do when we have a financial instrument in place is that we provide own risk balance sheet finance on top of that to complement the financial instrument, whether that is to support a managing authority or a national authority to actually provide national co-financing to their programs, or whether it is a co-financing at the level of the project. Those are situations where we can leverage, in addition to the financial instruments, financial resources that otherwise would not be available. I hope this answers your question. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christoph. So I want to take a moment to take a question that's come in from the audience. Frank, I think you might be the best one to answer this. So this question is from Angel Peña. What is the path for an NGO or a startup to participate in the program? I know oftentimes we hear that for smaller entities it can be intimidating when you're looking at how to benefit from financial instruments. What would be your answer to that?
It's difficult to answer without knowing, obviously, more details of what this NGO startup is, I suppose. But I think the new European Bauhaus instrument, for example, is an embodiment of engaging with the community, particularly at the local level. And I think what does that mean? Well, that means indeed engaging with both public and private stakeholders at that local level who are involved in the regeneration of a particular area. That would then, I imagine, naturally include small companies, startups, NGOs, etc. I think it's then up to the people who then design the instrument to decide, is there an additional role perhaps for these organizations to play? Perhaps it's in the governance of of the instrument, for example, deciding which projects are best to do, or which ones are prioritized over others, etc. So I think there's obviously multiple ways in which smaller organizations at the local level can get involved. But obviously engaging directly with fund managers, whether it's banks or specialized intermediaries, I mean, this is how the money is going to be delivered on the ground. That's obviously the most direct way, I suppose, of being in contact here.
Well, let's move on to specifically how these financial instruments can benefit the policy objectives, which of course is their main point. Martin, let's go to you remotely there in Slovakia. So for you, what role will these models play in achieving the policy objectives of the programs, specifically in Slovakia?
Thank you. Yes, the models, I will again specifically speak about the one model, which is a combination of a financial instrument and a grant. We are looking to use it actually like everywhere where we need to boost the policy objectives, and specifically in the area of energy efficiency. But we try to use a similar model to, for instance, address policy objectives in the area of social economy, etc., where some level of grant element will actually really help in combining like a standard business activity and directing this activity towards achieving the policy objectives. So it's a very sound logic for us, and for energy efficiency, specifically in public buildings, but also in SMEs. This is the combination of grant with a financial instrument is going to be the mainstream approach.
Well, let's find out about the situation in Bulgaria. Eva, if you had to pick 3 features of the NEB financial instruments model that you think might facilitate the take-up and implementation in Bulgaria, what would those 3 features be?
Thanks, Dave, for the questions. First, of course, a combination of support in one operation. Clearly, the combination in 2 operations, as I've already mentioned, is quite complex, and the final recipients are burdened with a lot of administrative burdens, etc. So it's quite difficult also to establish the financial flows, to have regular payments to contractors. So it's a real mess, this combination in 2 operations. So I really recommend that we can use this combination in 1 operation. Moreover, it's very important that the financial instrument rules apply to the whole investment, because now we are observing projects that half are under the grant rules, the other half is under the financial instrument rules, and it's very hard to be managed. Second, again, I would like to recommend technical support in the form of grant to be provided either via one-stop shop or just a technical support for the development of projects, because it really showed that for more ambitious projects, such technical support is vital. And last but not least, I see a quite enhanced role of the financial intermediary. And in certain cases and in certain places like Bulgaria, where there is a professionally led financial intermediaries with substantial experience from Jessica, such an enhanced role is really welcome. And I do think that we may really provide structural financing and stimulate a better design of such projects. So these are the three main features.
Thanks a lot. Jonathan, let's put a question to you next. Could you tell us how FICompass and indeed the EIB advisory and the Commission also support managing authorities seeking to implement financial instruments based on either REPowerEU or new European Bauhaus models?
Thank you, Dave. I will reply on behalf of the Commission, what we can do in the Commission, and I'll leave it to Frank to explain EIB advisory and FICompass. In the Commission, I mean, and those of you who are working in managing authorities will be aware that we have a whole team of people, some of whom are managed by Emma, who face the member states and deal with day-to-day issues, which issues that managing authorities come with questions and so on. So the Commission support will be delivered through our geographic units, who can call on my team to help out with some technical advice in the normal way that you do it, whether by email or in the margins of a monitoring committee or something like that. We can also guide you towards FICompass, and I think that's where Frank comes in.
Yeah, Frank, how can EIB help support?
Well, I mean, I think to a large extent, some of my colleagues have already said the importance of technical assistance and advisory support at all levels in the implementation is probably vital. I think most people think about technical assistance as something that happens at the project level, so it helps to identify a project, prepare a project, and then ultimately it can get financed. But that's not all that's needed, I think, and particularly when it comes to financial instruments, there's a lot of help and support needed much further upstream, as we might say, earlier on in the process. And this is where I think platforms like the FICompass, which we put together with the Commission, was exactly that, designed to target the managing authorities, the upstream bodies that actually have to make these decisions early on around, should I use financial instruments or not? Which sectors should I use them for? What's the level now? I mean, now we have an added complexity. How should I blend them? How much grant should I use versus financial instruments? And even more, I would say right now, because of course there's many different kinds of EU funds out there. If we think about not just the cohesion funds, but also, of course, the recovery and resilience funds, modernization funds, all of these funds that potentially could be used for these kinds of projects. And I think, your poor managing authorities are out there thinking, which funds should I use for what? What instruments make sense? What sectors are best for financial instruments? And I think this is where we can add lots of value based on our experience, and of course the Commission colleagues being able to talk to managing authorities on a daily basis. I think from both sides we can hopefully help managing authorities to make the right decisions here.
Okay, let's take another question from the audience. I'm going to put this question to Emma. The question is from Catalina Papari. What are the main challenges for implementing these models by managing authorities, and how are these mitigated by the European Commission and the EIB? Do you expect many different take-ups across member states?
Thank you. Well, I think, really the most important message is really to go for it in the sense of using financial instruments as much as possible when their use is warranted for investment generating revenues or achieving cost savings. And we know there is a challenge because as I was referring really to the workload, to the challenge that member states and managing authorities are confronted with. But really the message is you are not alone in this journey. There are several helpful models and examples, and there is a wealth of technical assistance options available for supporting managing authorities that actually, to convince them to use financial instruments. And both the models that have been presented today are actually great examples of this. So, in terms of the reluctance that we see from the managing authorities in using more or in using in general financial instruments is because they don't feel equipped. they feel that they lack the experience to go for this. And actually, in reality, when you look at the experience that we have already accumulated, you can relatively quickly build the necessary capacity, and the ones who have implemented financial instruments in the last years do not regret it and continue to implement financial instruments. But we, of course, expect them to increase the commitments as the needs are so big and so urgent in particular. So the combination of grants and financial instruments in a single operation is also a great way to build expertise and capacity for using financial instruments to reply to the challenges that are raised. And both the models that we have seen today provide useful examples for potential combination. So really to guide member states through all the way, and that the Commission and the EIB are there to support. So we see 3 regions in Poland benefited from the member state-specific support provided by the FI Compass, which helped building the local capacity, because really possibly the biggest challenge is building the local capacity to properly set up financial instruments for energy efficiency in this case. So the option also for a one-stop shop under both the energy efficiency and the NEB financial instruments can help final recipients, supporting them in project preparation and alongside the investment cycle. So both models are flexible, adaptable to the policy objectives of the specific programs. So responding to the doubts, the concerns, the challenges, this is the way we are trying to help in really making those models flexible and adapting the various elements of the models by the member state in order to maximize the efficiency for their purpose, because really the flexibility is one of the model's biggest upsides. So we will really hope that we can tackle the challenges together. We can give the necessary support together with the EIB for any uptake, much bigger uptake of the financial instruments in the 21-27 period.
Okay, our next question from the audience is for Christoph. This question is from Nikos Hadjisavas. Can you elaborate on the current high energy prices? How do they affect the optimum mix of grants with loans?
Okay, thank you very much for this very pertinent question. Let me first say that the sharp increase in high energy prices, or in the energy prices, had basically a double effect, and the effects work a bit against each other. First of all, with high energy prices, the break-even point for an energy efficiency investment becomes closer, because of course the upfront investment to actually pay for the necessary insulation, heating systems, etc. Let's take that as an example. Is economically speaking more attractive if you have high energy prices relative to a scenario where energy prices are low. So that's the first point where the assessment of the right size or the right dimension between grant and loan needs to be carefully looked at. But there's another one. And of course, the high energy prices has a very much an impact, especially for private households in their ability to afford, in general, investment. So the problem here is that while you actually, from a pure economic point of view, over the lifetime of an investment, you may actually need less grants to make such an investment economical, you may actually need more at this moment to provide the right incentives, because just people have less money in their pocket to actually afford investments. And I think one has to look at both elements, and clearly then it depends also what type of investment it is. Some investments require less grants because there's quicker payoff. Others provide more grants because there's a longer term payoff period. And therefore, I think there is no clear answer to that question. There is no simple answer to that question. But for each instrument, one has to look carefully at the two dimensions, affordability of the investment and economic return of an investment, and try to find the right equilibrium. Let me just say that there are various ways of combining grants with loans. There is, of course, an interest rebate, which is always a possibility, especially now when interest rates are about to rise again. This may become a very important element of subsidy or grant for a project. Then there's also the classical investment grant, which is dispersed upfront. Then there is a concession element that can be provided through advisory support, which is another element. So besides finding the right equilibrium between loan and grant, there is also the element of how to structure the concessional element and what is it that is really needed to unlock the investment. So in a nutshell, it depends, as it always does. And that's where also Frank's team comes in. We stand here ready to actually assess with the managing authority which combination, which also equilibrium between grant and loan is the right one, and then develop that together with the managing authority. Thank you.
Well, on this same subject of the equilibrium between grants and loans, of another related question, Frank, I'll put this to you. It's from Jan Novak. Can private promoters, such as ESCOs, also use a combination of grants and loans in urban or energy efficiency projects?
I think the short answer, if there is such a thing, is yes. But of course, then there's the caveats, and I think I'll hand over to Jonathan in a second about, I think it's also about what's programmed, what's eligible at a national level, and depending on programs and how they're written, etc. But I think in general, I think there's a keen interest to involve the private sector in the financing of energy efficiency, whether it's purely by bringing in financing from commercial banks, but also, of course, bringing in private sector expertise, which is clearly what ESCOs do provide in many instances. ESCOs can be financed, as in most cases, in most countries, ESCOs are usually small or medium-sized enterprises, so they normally would fit that definition of beneficiary. But even if they're larger ones, I think there's different ways in which ESCOs can get involved and get the benefits of grant and loan financing. I'll end by saying that there's actually another interesting FICOMPAS publication which people might want to look at on energy performance contracting, which actually goes into how public buildings, for example, can be renovated using structural funds, and the role of ESCOs in actually delivering renovation through these types of contracts, and how the financing of grants and loans can come together there. But John, you want to pick up on the eligibility point?
No, I think you've covered it, Frank. That, I mean, obviously, much of the eligibility in the programs is addressed to SMEs. And so if the ESCO is an SME, then it's obviously a lot easier to provide support to the project. And yes, and I was going to mention the EPC paper on the FICOMPAS website as well. It's very clear, and it will guide you down the path of energy performance contracting, and I think it's very helpful in that respect.
Another question on the same topic for Christoph, this from an anonymous questioner. Is there guidance on management costs and fees for financial instruments that include an element of a grant? And do these differ to guidance for loan and equity financial instruments?
Well, I think actually that the Commission colleagues are better placed to answer that one.
Thank you. Yes, the management costs and fees can be calculated in two ways. If you do a public procurement procedure for a financial intermediary to implement a financial instrument, that will be the rates of management costs and fees will be decided in the contract that is signed with the financial intermediary. So you are free to have as little or as much management costs and fees as you want. It's decided by the market. If a selection procedure does not take place, then the Common Provisions Regulation sets out a series of thresholds, and the highest for equity financial instruments at the implementing fund level is 15%, The lowest is for loan and guarantee instruments at 5% at the holding fund level. But these management costs and fees are set out in the Common Provisions Regulation.
So I have one last question for Emma, and I think this would be useful for some of our viewers to know. What practical advice would you give to your managing authorities in the member states you're responsible for as we look forward to how people are actually going to be using these?
Thank you. Well, I partly replied to this while replying earlier to the question, and really the advice is really to go for it, because you are not alone in this journey. We know that there are concerns. We know that, you know, in terms of capacity, insufficient capacity, insufficient expertise, being overwhelmed by the load, the particular difficult situation we are living over the last years, the fear sometimes also of the audits ex post. But the message is that there is a whole community of expertise in this area which you can really build upon and which you can really rely upon to look at what is being done, what has been done, and what will be done, to actually realize that it doesn't take so much to build the necessary capacity and to go for that. And use the financial instruments as much as possible when their use is warranted, and, you know, for investment generating revenues or achieving cost savings, and in particular in the area covered today in energy efficiency and the new Bauhaus initiative. So really go for it and just ask around to this enormous and very precious community of practice, because there is guidance, there is support, there are models to follow.
Great. Address some of the barriers of implementation for energy efficiency financial instruments that you may have experienced during the previous programming period. Are you hopeful that things may be easier this time? Martin, are you still with us? We may have lost Martin.
Yes. Sorry, I wasn't sure you were addressing me. Yeah, we do have high hopes actually that this programming period will be somewhat lighter. We are pleased. I mean, one thing is the experience we have gained, and it's a long story how we established a fund of funds in Slovakia and targeting all sorts of thematic objectives. This fund is called Slovak Investment Holding, and there was an ambition to process or to allocate plus or minus 3% of the funds available within the previous programming period, and this amount has more than doubled actually during the lifetime. There is a lot of positive experience with this, specifically, like if we speak of some areas, like the one of the biggest market failure in Slovakia was the financing to SMEs, and if that thanks to the financial instruments and to Slovak Investment Holding, we were able to address both the private equity capital accessibility to finance, but also to go through the pandemic in a manner that the SMEs still, but also larger companies had access to finance. So there is already an experience gained. We learned to do the processes. We learned to go through the public procurement and select financial intermediaries, which is a next level of sophistication, and this all helps us to have a lot of optimism together with the support coming from the Commission and from a traditional support coming from the EIB and the advisory services to be much stronger in financial instruments in this programming period. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And one last question to Eva. As we look forward to these new models that are being used, how do you expect that people in Bulgaria will react to these new models?
I think that they would welcome such models, especially the new European Bauhaus model. There are many bottom-up initiatives in the major cities, and we can build on them to create this participatory and transdisciplinary approach. So I think that they would welcome such an initiative taken on the current urban development funds. As far as energy efficiency is concerned, we are also welcoming such propositions. We have made our efforts in this programming period of 14-20, in which we are currently operating, and we have set an energy efficiency product for single-family buildings, which was 100% loan. We saw that it doesn't work at all, so everybody is asking us, is there a possibility for combination of financing? So we are ready also for such an instrument, which put a stronger emphasis on energy efficiency. It's a current issue in Bulgaria. A lot of people are interested in such measures. In the recovery and resilience mechanism of Bulgaria has been envisaged such measures, but with much limited scope. And if a financial instrument is put to place, I believe that the scope will be far greater. Thanks.
Great, well, thank you very much. And I want to say thank you to all of our panelists for some great insights. I'm sure that's very, very useful to the people watching who are now going to be working with these financial instruments. We did have a question in the chat about where you could find links to detailed descriptions of these new models and financial instruments. You can actually find a direct link there in the list of questions. And then also, of course, you can find all of this on the PhiCompass website. That's phicompass.eu. So thank you again to the speakers. Thanks to you in the audience at home for following along, spending your late afternoon with us and asking some great questions. Thanks so much to the organizational team for putting together this event. It's really, really, I think, invaluable for all of the people who need to navigate these financial instruments. And we're really interested in your feedback on the event. You see a QR code there on the closing slide. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you directly to a feedback form so you can tell us how helpful today's event was and if you would like to see other elements incorporated in the future. So again, thank you to the panelists, thank you to the audience, and I wish you all a wonderful evening.